Good morning. As with the sermon today, our songs this morning were first chosen to sing on Martin Luther King weekend. So they're songs about the civil rights struggle. The first song we're going to sing is Follow the Drinking Gourd. Now, some of you may already know that this is a song about the Big Dipper, but actually it's a much more complex song than that. It's really a travel itinerary for enslaved people in the South on how to get to the North if they wanted to get there. So listen for some of these cues. When the first quail calls, that means it's springtime and it's the optimum time for weather for going north. And next you see the river ends between two hills. Don't give up. There's another river on the other side. The riverbank will make you a mighty good road. Stay off the road. Dead trees will show you the way. Moss grows on the north side of dead trees. Follow the drinking gourd, the North Star. Sing along with us if you know the song.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Society of New Haven. To those of you here in the sanctuary, as well as online via Zoom and YouTube. Welcome to Black History Month. I am Rich Stockton, a member of the Worship Committee and your worship associate today. You can refer to me with the pronouns he and him. We are a diverse, multi-generational faith community that inspires lives of compassion and generosity, nurtures spiritual growth, cultivates transformative connections, and creates a more just world. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. We support our UUA president, Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt, and other people of faith who were arrested while they protested in Washington. I found these words of Martin Luther King, and they are so relevant today. America, he said, be true to what you said on paper. Somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of the press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for right. I do read the announcements in the order of service or in the newsletter, some highlights. Though not required, we are encouraging masking for everyone's safety. The YRUU High School group will be hosting social hour today. They will be accepting donations in baskets on the table to help offset the cost of their trip to Star Island in June. Connect's delegate assembly meeting will be today at our neighbor Spring Glen Church at 4 p.m. Join us for an author talk with National Book Award winner Ned Blackhawk on February 15th at noon in the USNH Sanctuary. For families with young people in attendance, if there is a space in the back with some quiet activities and comfortable seating, if that works for you, please know that all ages are warmly welcomed to this and every service at USNH. And if you are visiting today and want to learn more about USNH, there's a table in the far right corner of the social hall after the service where members of the Connection team will be available to answer your questions. And everyone is invited to attend a special presentation about Islam with Mubarakah Ibrahim in the library after today's service from 12 to 1:30. Finally, enjoy soup and fellowship in the social hall after worship today. Roy's here? There she is. Loved stands for living our values each day. And we'll begin today with a love talk about Connect by Roy Anastasio.
Good morning, everybody. I guess you already know my name, so I'll just get right into it. In his January 11th sermon, Reverend Stephen said, and I'm paraphrasing, that we progressives are often afraid of power, afraid to use it and claim it. The very word brings up what we fight against, those who use power to subjugate others, to inflict cruelty in order to achieve corrupt ends. That is negative power. Reverend Stephen also reminded us about power from a positive perspective, power that is rooted in love. And nowhere is that kind of power more evident than in Connect, congregations organized for a new Connecticut. A collective of 40 congregations in southern Connecticut. Connect's members are people of diverse races and backgrounds who have joined together to take action on social issues that affect our families and communities. The foundation of Connect's work is a simple equation: organized people plus organized money equals power. Positive power that confronts systems and groups who stand in the way of justice. How does Connect organize people? Well, we get to know each other, listen to each other's stories and concerns through one-on-one meetings, and from there we build out, researching the issues that have emerged from our members and working together to gain a deep understanding of the challenge. Then we answer the question, is this winnable? Once identified, we take collective, deliberate action to ensure that the issue is addressed by elected leaders and decision makers. We hold those in power accountable. And here are just a few examples of Connect's impact. By now, you probably know that Connect was the central reason for the passage of Connecticut's Clean Slate Law in 2021. a law that expunges the records of nonviolent offenders who have served their sentences already. It was a big win, enabling people with low-level offenses to gain greater access to jobs, housing, and education without the stigma of a record. Initially, however, the state was only able to seal about 13,000 records. This was due to a complicated technology glitch. But what you might not know is the Connect Criminal Justice team never rested on its laurels. They have spent the last few years in countless meetings with the governor's office, patiently and firmly pressing those in charge of activating the process. And finally, 4 years after the passage, more than 150,000 ex-offenders have had their records sealed. That's a win. Our education team in 2023, working with state partners, pressed for full and fair funding for all Connecticut public schools. The result? $150 million in additional funding above the governor's proposed budget. Our gun violence prevention and safety team led a successful campaign with the National Gun Safety Consortium to distribute the latest high-tech safety devices to Connecticut police departments. The first step in bringing these devices to the public market and decreasing firearm thefts, accidents, and deaths. And with a pledge from its sizable membership to boycott Avelo Airlines, Connect played a key role in convincing the airline to drop its deportation flights. That's the positive power of an organized collective that represents more than 30,000 Connecticut citizens. And now, after 10 years of involvement with Connect, I still feel exhilarated at our assemblies. I know I've been enriched as a person, having worked side by side with people of so many different backgrounds and faith practices. Through Connect, each of us can put into practice our UU covenants to be open, value differences, listen deeply, work with conflict, to name a few. We can all be active participants in what Martin Luther King described as power at its best. Love implementing the demands of justice. That is Connect. And I'd like to have our core team members please stand. If they're here, if anyone's here from our core team in the back. Core team, yay, Kenny. We would love for you to come to the assembly this afternoon, and we'd love to also invite new young members to our core team, so please contact any one of us if you're interested. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roy. Well, you guys are riled up this morning. I think it's something to do with not being at church for 2 weeks. Isn't it nice to be together? Oh, man. Rich, I'm going to invite you to light our chalice with these words from Paul Robeson. Sorrow will one day turn to joy. All that breaks the heart and oppresses the soul will one day give place to peace and understanding, and everyone will be free. That is the song, and that is the hope. Thank you, Rich. We have a tradition here of inviting folks to come forward to light a votive candle for joys or triumphs, and also the opportunity to place a shell or stone into the water for a burden and sorrow in your heart. I think I have, and I know that likely you have, a deep sorrow in your heart in that early this week, Christine Shadle died at the Yale Smiley Hospital. Her husband Andrew was with her, and it's very hard to share news like this. Christine fought an amazing battle. I was instructed by her with her unfatigable and indomitable goodwill, total lack of self-pity, and deep in her heart, like the words from Paul Robeson, and her work not only in our choir but also in the New Haven Oratorial Society. She gave her life ultimately for a positive song. And we don't have a time for her service yet, and that'll be shared with all of you. Nor do we have the time or information for a service for Jeremy Hill, who died recently at Whitney Center. We will convey that when we hear. But Joan Silverman's, her service will be at March 7th at 10:30 in the morning, and Bill Goward, his service on March 22nd after the service. And as well, the Meredith family wanted me to share with you. We heard last night from John and Susan's daughter, Emily, that Susan actually had a heart attack last Thursday. And before you have a heart attack, I'm happy to say that she is at home, she is recovering. She would welcome cards and letters and calls. So I have not yet had the opportunity to speak to her, since we just learned about this last night. But I know that all of us wish Susan well as she recovers. So, what is our song as I invite you forward? It's in our Teal hymnal, 1007, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. Thank you, Melinda. Well, I'm not Jesse. Jesse, as you know, is one of the most generous people on earth, but he has influenza and he does not wish to share it with you. So he called me yesterday and said, Stephen, can you do Time for All Ages? And I said, absolutely. I can do Time for All Sages, and here you are. There's an old Jewish story about a father who wishes to do some private reading, and his daughter is playing at his feet. And she keeps asking questions, and they're sweet and adorable questions, but, you know, occasionally parents aren't perfect, and he starts getting really impatient because he'd just really rather be reading. And so he has an inspired idea. In the newspaper there's a map of the world. And he says, you know, darling, I'm going to tear this up in little pieces, this map of the world, and I'm going to give it to you. And here's tape. And he thinks to himself, this will keep her occupied for hours. The world is a complicated place, as we all know. She comes back 5 minutes later with the project completely put together, and he's astonished. How in heaven's name did this little girl put together the world? She said, Daddy, it was easy. On the back of it, you didn't realize in the newspaper that there was a picture of a person. And I know what a person looks like, and it was really easy. One of the things we're learning is that the world, no matter how complex, is ultimately one person upon one person upon one person. Our faces blend. We are one. Anyone who says different is lying. And this world, no matter how complex, can be put together again, no matter how shredded, no matter how torn, because there's always a face. There's always a person there. Let's sing the children on. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. Go now in peace.
Each week, we recite together a brief version of our covenant. I encourage you to read the full covenant on our website. While the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. Please join me now in reciting the words that appear in your order of service or in the chat on the live stream. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, seek June and joy.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Dean. I'm your ministerial intern. My pronouns are he and them. Please join with me in a posture of prayer or meditation. Today I would like to focus us back to our greatest tenet of love as Unitarian Universalists. We've spent the past year in turmoil, in struggle, and frustration. Let's turn back to love. Love is what binds us. Love is going to seek us. Love is going to pass us through. Today in our reading of Martin Luther King, he says, injustice everywhere is a threat to injustice anywhere is a threat to injustice everywhere. But he also said, hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that. So take a moment to peel back the anger, the frustration, the sadness, and spend some time in thinking about your love. Love of our planet, love of our community, love of our family, love. One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal, that we seek but a means by which we arrive at that goal. Let love guide us. Let this be so. Amen.
We have so much to be grateful for, and we have so much to offer each other. Every week, we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by asking for your offering, as well as your pledging for the ministries of this congregation. You can go to our website, usnh.org, hit donate, or mail to our address, 700 Hartford Turnpike, Hamden, Connecticut. You may also make your offering by text using the number found in your order of service. Or, if you're here listening to music, you can put your donation into a plate as our ushers pass them around. Now, the Hamden Food Bank will receive a donation from this week's offering. Your generosity is greatly appreciated.
Thank you for that. Would you please join me in saying our responsive reading number 584 in our gray hymnal? And I want you to speak it out. This is Martin Luther King. This is not a quiet version, so no anemic speaking. A network of mutuality. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Good job. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. Before it is too late, we must narrow the gaping chasm between our proclamations of peace and our lowly deeds which precipitate and perpetuate war. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. Good job. Thanks.
I begin this morning where I left off my sermon on moral injury. I promised I would begin this sermon on moral regeneration with the exact same words from Martin Luther King. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive. And love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. It's really hard to believe all the things that have happened since I intended to give this sermon. To talk about moral injury, which is the pressure upon the heart when indignities and violence and shame and anger oppress us. And we wonder, what are we going to do with that pressure upon ourselves? When the world doesn't make sense, feels out of control, it seems to reward cruelty. We remember and honor and send love to Alex Preddy and Renee Good. They will always be remembered. Their names will be remembered, I believe, 100 years from now. But like has happened in the civil rights movement, with the death of the Unitarian minister, James Reeb, was the precipitating moment for the passage of the Voting Rights Act, often left with the dozens of civil rights black leaders who died quietly, almost unrecorded, dimly remembered. Let's keep in mind that ICE and Border Control have killed not 2, but 9 people this month, the month of January. And you may not have heard their names. But they were all fellow neighbors. They were all children of God. A black man named Keith Porter, a Cambodian man named Parati Lia, 5 Latinos, Habar Sanchez Dominguez, Victor Manuel Diaz, Luis Bertran Yanaz Cruz, Luis Gustavo Camares, Geraldo Lumos Campos. 9. When the media only does their job half-heartedly and sometimes half-completed, when judges, even well-meaning ones, aren't moving fast enough or they themselves do not realize the extent of the danger, when the elites do not stand up for simple decency, when they surrender like cardboard in the rain so they can get on board the gravy train, then it's time for us to do our jobs. And that's exactly what's happening in Minnesota. In Minnesota, and Minneapolis and St. Paul will be remembered, I believe, in the same way that Lexington and Concord are remembered. In the same way that the Pettus Bridge in Selma is remembered. As a turning point, as a shift So that an attempt to make us mute and cowed has not worked. That does not mean that this thing is over. It just means something has shifted. And there's something profound going on. That's why we're here today. That's why you and I have found each other and this faith, the free faith. For moments like this, to say those names, to mourn, and to lift them up. The people have done an amazing thing when so many people have not done their jobs. It's an old joke where the devil goes and wants to grab an extra soul, and so he picks a prominent lawyer in town. And if you'd like, you can substitute for this joke, tech bro. He says, I'm going to give you almost unlimited power, where your clients will worship you, colleagues will be in awe of you, you'll have vast amounts of money. But listen, I will take your soul, the souls of your children, your parents, your grandparents, your spouse, and all of your friends in compensance. And the lawyer thought for a minute and said, what's the catch? When Martin Luther King said, we are here to recover the very soul of America, he wasn't just talking about the soul of one individual, but of an entire people, of understanding what they're about, what their dreams are, and what their hopes are. This month has seemed like an eternity. Yes, we've mourned not just moral injury, but actual physical injury. But the people in Minneapolis have gotten out at -8 degrees, and they have marched. And that's not easy. And they have all shown us a way. But at the very same time, our hearts get broken. The use of a 5-year-old boy, Liam Ramos, as bait to reach and grab his family, where today a father and son are in Dilley, Texas, and yes, a judge is saying that they may go free, but do not for a moment think that this thing is over. Because you may not know that 5 children from that little Minneapolis suburban school where Liam was captured are in Dilley, Texas. 5. 2 just on Friday, where a mother was snatched and she asked for the school representatives to bring her children, a 2nd-year grader and a 5th grader, to be with her even as she was sent down to Texas. The superintendent said it was awful. It was heartbreaking for everyone. This is something we were not prepared for or trained for, because we have dedicated our lives to protecting and educating children. Children. You and I are going to have to get a lot more comfortable with understanding and grasping and using our power. Power that we in fact possess. And then be ready to act with our bodies on the line if necessary. And when I originally wrote those words, maybe it was rhetoric, right? But now it's very real. Now it's very real. If you weren't there on the day I preached on moral injury, you didn't miss much. Because life has just gone on like a locomotive off its tracks. We have to understand, ultimately, what is going on in this country. And the reason that I'm actually filled with hope this day, despite my indignation, the reason I'm filled with hope was articulated by the Atlantic writer Adam Seward, who says if the Minnesota resistance has an overarching ideology, you could call it neighborism, a commitment to protecting the people around you, no matter who they are or where they come from. The contrast with the philosophy guiding the Trump administration couldn't be more extreme, Adam Seward writes. Vice President Vance has said, quote, "It is totally reasonable and acceptable for American citizens to look at their next-door neighbors and say, I want to live next to people who I have something in common with. I don't want to live next to 4 families of strangers." That's what he said. Minnesotans are insisting that their neighbors are their neighbors, whether they were born in Minneapolis or Mardisku. That is arguably a deeply Christian philosophy, but apparently one loathed by some of the most powerful Christians in America. I don't normally read a quote that long, but I think he really put his finger on it. Neighborism. And maybe where have you heard that word? Well, I know that someone's going to say Mr. Rogers, and I bow to you and I accept that. But I'm going to be a little bit more radical this morning and say you've heard it from the parable of the Good Samaritan. And because it's a story sort of encrusted in sort of spiritual cliche and overuse, let me remind you that the parable was astonishingly offensive to those who heard it for the first time 2,000 years ago. Because a Samaritan was someone that a Jew could not sit and eat and share a meal with. They were not neighbors. And so when Jesus told the tale of the person literally being beaten near death and being taken to be cared for, and who walked past? A priest, perhaps in a pink robe, we don't know. A Levite, one of the higher people in the Jewish hierarchy, walked past the bleeding man, and a Samaritan took him, paid for his care, sat by his bed. And then Jesus asked the probing question of his listeners, who then was the neighbor? Someone said, well, the neighbor was the one who showed mercy. That's who our neighbors are. That's who our neighbors are. Do you want to see power? We luckily, blessedly, are seeing it in the streets of Minneapolis. You're seeing it in the clergy who are willing to be arrested. You are seeing it without assurance of victory. But something has broken in the numbness. Something has drained away that felt like hopelessness. The desire of this regime to leave you mute, that has been radically rejected. People like you and I sense that it is on us. It is on us. And it is staggering and wonderful to see. For we must change. It's so hard to imagine living this way forever. We must change. And when we can see our fellow neighbors as children of creation like ourselves, then the people that are brutalized, harangued, injured, and incarcerated, they will be free. It is King's greatest lesson that moral regeneration is needed before hatred changes all of us. Moral regeneration is needed before hatred changes all of us. And he saw this as a long, long contest. He saw it as a cosmic, transcendental one. And that's what moral injury is in the end. A recognition that we can hurt as one. And that the suffering can stop. And if we are one, then we need to accept the latent power that emerges from that realization. And it won't be easy. It will be a struggle. Our victories will be partial and provisional. But Martin Luther King told us a long time ago, even in the face of death which he accepted, that the power of nonviolence wins because there is something mysterious at the heart of things. It is a true power that violence and appetite and grasping cannot overcome. Moral regeneration begins when we accept our responsibility as neighbors. There's absolutely nothing naive or sentimental about any of this. It is quite direct. It is a direct confrontation. The week since I wasn't able to give this sermon, I have thought long and hard about what would a moral genius like King or Gandhi do right now. And while there's nothing wrong in seeking such a solution and balm to our distress, it is profoundly the wrong question. Because their particular moral genius lay in two areas. One, to let people like you and me recover and enact our own agency. And two, to open up people that on the surface are the other, and to have both parties recover their shared being. I hate what ICE and Border Patrol are doing. But King would remind us not to hate the people who have been seduced and drawn into stepping into the green armor and the masks. We cannot hate them. Nonviolence works when such self-release has the chance to work. And that's why he works so hard to train people. Because to train people towards nonviolence takes enormous discipline and patience and astonishing forbearance to allow our rage, our quite real rage, to blend into something else, something that feels like freedom for you and for the other. I would love to think it's easy and immediate. I'd like to believe its victory is assured, but neither is true. What you may not know is near the end of Martin Luther King's life, he went to Chicago to work on housing. It did not go well there. All the victories in the South, in places like Birmingham and Selma, faded away because Chicago was a harder nut to crack. And on one particular hate-filled march, a stone was thrown. It struck him in the forehead, and he staggered. He was rocked back. And as he got up, he said to his aides, "I have to do this to expose myself, to bring this hate into the open." It's a new book by the black thinker at Harvard, Brandon Terry, which I recommend to you highly. It's a difficult and long book, but it is well worth your time. It's entitled Shattered Dreams and Infinite Hope. Because he wants to move past the old romantic narrative, because he thinks it's weary and exhausted. It may have run its course. But what he says, what Terry says, is he also rejects the deep pessimism that is also afloat and amongst us, a rejection of moral possibility. He says, no, that is self-denying behavior and thinking. But there's a third way, he says. It's one I've tried to preach from here, this pulpit, this honored pulpit. And to steady my own soul when I am despairing. And that is what Terry calls a new tragic vision of the civil rights movement. Tragic because it is solidly realistic and mindful of the limitation of human beings. King was right, even when sometimes we do not hear him right. The struggle is long and bitter, and it may be violent to the core, but it's worth it. Because there is something that he called soul force. It's an idea he took from Gandhi. And that's one of the beautiful things about what I want to share with you today, is that this force, soul force, actually flows everywhere. It was in the story I told you of the Samaritan. And it was in a young man named Thoreau who went to prison for civil disobedience in Concord, Massachusetts. And from what he wrote, a novelist named Tolstoy took, and from that, Gandhi read Tolstoy, and from that, Martin Luther King read Gandhi and went to India. This transmission of something powerful that we may transmit today, that is ours to share, to knock against violence in its all forms of ugliness. Moral regeneration starts when we start, when we don't give up, and tell our children that they cannot give up either. Now, I can tick off 1,000 things that will need moral regeneration when this current struggle campaign moves into its new phase. And I believe beaten back. You may have a long list, I have a long list, but I'm going to go back to something that happened in the very, very beginnings of this regime that a lot of people have forgotten about. And that is the destruction of USAID in the first days of this regime, when the first trillionaire on the planet got to take food away from the least of us, and where it's estimated that nearly 1 million children may have died in the last year because they simply didn't have food to eat, and the food that was prepared from farmers in the Midwest was burned at the dock rather than given to children. That's kind of the place where moral regeneration has to start, to recover our soul, to figure out what do we do. It's great to have heroes, but King reminds us over and over again, you must be your own hero. You must rise when you are staggered. You need to be aware not only of soul force, not only of nonviolence, not only of civil disobedience, but the power of the march and the power of tragedy. King said, our willing acceptance of unwanted and unfortunate circumstances, even as we still cling to a radiant hope. Our acceptance of finite disappointment, even as we adhere to infinite hope. Armed and armored forces will no doubt come in numbers eventually to Connecticut and to this community. I don't know when, but it's hard to imagine that they won't. So, here's the deal. We have much heartache and outrage to go. But when that stone hits and we stagger, and we will rise, and we will somehow keep walking for others and for ourselves, for our children and grandchildren, for any sort of viable future that makes sense, that takes us to where, past all tragedy, infinite hope is ours, is nurtured and survives. Resilient, restless, relentless. Amen. Thank you. Shall we gather at the river? 1046 in your teal hymnal. Shall we gather at the river? Of the river, washing of its silver spray, we will walk and worship ever on the happy golden day. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful Soon our happy hearts will clear of God. I invite Rich to come forward to address our flame as we say these words in your order of service. Carry forth this chalice flame, its illumination into our daily lives, its sustaining warmth into our relationships, the light of reason shining beyond these walls. May we carry the fire of hope in our hearts this day and in the week to come. And I have Jonathan in the back holding a basket, and in that basket are red whistles. And please take one as you go. You may need one. Your neighbor may need one. And we have more on order that are coming on Tuesday. So if you don't get one today, we'll have them next week as well. Excuse me? Well, if you see something going on that you don't like, you blow that whistle like hell.
There's 2 ways to do it.
Yeah.
If you see them in the area or they're around, you go. And if you see them actually taking someone or approaching someone, you go like this. And now, while I have your attention, let me mention, I don't know if people saw it, but it kind of got lost in the news, like, on February 14th, Saturday, here, from 12 to 5, we are hosting a nonviolent direct action training by a trainer from Equate, which is a... Yeah. Yeah. Here, wait. You can sit here. Yeah, what? I'm not gonna...
You can,
So it's next Saturday.
No, the 14th.
14th.
2 Saturdays from yesterday. It's right there. Oh, okay, I don't know.
have
Can you hear me? If I talk toward it? Okay. It's Saturday the 14th, 12 to 5. It's a brown bag lunch, and then we're going to do training for all the things that Reverend Stephen just talked about. And it's free, and you can sign up. It's in the news. The link is in the newsletter. If you go into that announcement, but there's also a QR code on the little stand that's near the entrance. There's a little flyer, but it has a QR code on it, and you can click that and register. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me. Even sometime when someone whistle. Now, may peace which passes all understanding. Keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge of love. May this peace be yours as we go forth. Let's have soup, everybody. Thank you, Rich.